Everywhere we look, democracy seems to be in trouble. Only you can protect democracy. Welcome to Section 1 and 2 S.I.D.E, Students in Democracy Education. 10 fundamental principles of liberal democracy and 10 conversations. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this edition of S.I.D.E, Students in Democracy Education. And today, your conversation is going to be about the rule of law principle. And here's how it goes. The law shall apply evenly, consistently, fairly, and reasonably to each person and to government, and shall be subject to oversight by and recourse to an independent judiciary. So what does this mean? The rule of law principle ensures that no person and no state or non-state actor is above the law. And it insulates the judicial and prosecutorial branches of government from interference or arbitrary direction from or by the political branches of government. In other words, by the executive and legislative branches of government. The rule of law principle begins with the assumption that there is and that there must be law and laws. For the absence of law and of laws suggests a state of lawlessness. That makes sense, right? A society without laws is one in which no behavior, no human action or conduct can be said to be against the law. What would such a society look like? It would look chaotic, dangerous, unpredictable, nasty, and very unfair. In its most basic sense, the rule of law means that there must be some legal framework. There must be some enforceable, binding rules that are recognized by everyone, both individuals and government, and which are applied equally through some mechanism that we all respect or at least grudgingly agree to defer to and be guided by. A just society, a liberal democratic society, is a society that is subject to and committed to upholding that rule of law. It is one that has often been called a government of laws, not of human beings. Clearly, the laws are made by and for human beings, but they must be equally respected by and applied to everyone. It's critically important that we think of the rule of law as being that system of procedures, of processes, if you will, through which we are able to demand and obtain a measure of accountability from those who made the laws and from those who seek to enforce them against us. It is law, not the arbitrary, ever-changing will of the ruler or the lawmaker, that establishes the applicable standards of conduct and rules of engagement that apply to all of us and to our government. It secures a predictable political, legal, economic, social environment in which each one of us is able to make our own life plans, carry out our own agendas without unexpected and unfair interference from government or from the powers that be. It means that not only are we subject to the law, but we also have some responsibility for making the law and some opportunity to engage in both the law making and the law enforcing process in some way, shape, or form. And it means that the law can never be applied, particularly against us, in a way that deprives us of our basic rights. One of the ways in which we recognize a system that is subject to the rule of law is one in which the law, and indeed the laws, are knowable, are comprehensible, are understandable, and therefore that the legal environment in which we operate as citizens, in which we act and conduct our affairs, must have a degree of predictability so that we aren't taken by surprise, so that we aren't treated unfairly when political or legal or other government authority seeks to enforce a law against us. The rule of law means that every individual is equal before and under the law, and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. In fact, that very phrase is set out in Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 15.1, the equality provision, and is expressed in different ways in constitutions of other free and democratic societies. What's critically important is this notion of equality with which we began the S.I.D.E series. The rule of law means nothing if it isn't applied inside a context of equal citizens. That's the entire point of the rule of law, that it applies equally to one and all, and that it is never applied in an arbitrary fashion. So we understand that in a society subject to the rule of law, power is exercised in accordance with law, in a manner that is predictable or that must be predictable, and in an environment in which the exercise of power can be challenged. The exercise of power is contestable by those against whom the law is applied and enforced. In this way, respect for the rule of law is another way of giving expression to our equal moral personality and to our basic human dignity. We said at the outset that the rule of law means that the law itself will be applied evenly, consistently, fairly, and reasonably to each person, and shall be subject to oversight by and recourse to an independent judiciary. There is no possibility of fairness and of justice without an institution that is able to operate without interference from power and political authority. That's the judiciary. When we talk about the independence of the judiciary, we're talking about a society in which judges are not subject to the will and whim of those who exercise political power. Imagine a society in which the law is applied differently to different people, to different parties, depending on who is in power, depending on what the implications or consequences are against this person or that person, against this institution or that institution, this company or business, or that company or business. Imagine how unfair that would be. Many societies in the world today do not operate in accordance with the rule of law principle. They treat different citizens differently. They treat many, if not most citizens, unfairly, unreasonably, and in a manner that is not consistent with the way in which others are treated, particularly those in power or those who occupy privileged positions. The rule of law must mean a system in which those who interpret, apply, and enforce the law are not subject to the prejudices of those who exercise political power. That's what we mean when we talk about an independent judiciary. That's also what we mean when we talk about an independent prosecutorial branch. Those who are investigated and prosecuted for having broken the law are not subject to the whims and wills and prejudices of political power or political authority. They are prosecuted because they broke the law, not because someone in power chooses to target them or to single them out for either preference or particular punishment. The rule of law principle is one of the most important principles of liberal democracy. Over to you for a fantastic conversation on the rule of law principle.